For nearly 3 centuries, the Ming Dynasty ruled China. Its emperors built the Great Wall, commissioned the Forbidden City, and presided over one of the wealthiest, most powerful civilizations in the world. Art, architecture, and culture flourished under their reign. But by the early 17th century, cracks were appearing beneath the dynasty's glittering facade, cracks that would lead to one of the most shocking collapses in Chinese history. The empire was vast, stretching from the northern steppes to the southern coast, controlling millions of subjects. Yet wealth and grandeur hid deep problems. Corruption ran rampant within the imperial court. Officials hoarded resources while peasants starved. Famine swept through the countryside as rivers dried and crops failed. Bandits became organized rebels, and the once loyal army grew ineffective, plagued by desertion and poor leadership. The Ming, it seemed, had grown complacent, blind to the storm building around them. By 1644, rebellion was widespread. The most powerful of these was led by Li Zicheng, a former postal worker turned rebel commander. He rallied tens of thousands of desperate peasants under the banner of overthrowing a corrupt regime. His forces moved swiftly through the northern provinces, defeating Ming armies that had grown weak and undisciplined. For ordinary people, Li's rebellion was both terrifying and liberating. The emperor's hold on power seemed fragile, and rumors of his cruelty and indecision spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, the last Ming emperor, Chongzhen, was young and inexperienced. He ascended to the throne at a time when the dynasty's foundations were already crumbling. Desperate to hold his empire together, he dismissed competent ministers, executed those he suspected of disloyalty, and vacillated between panic and indecision. Courtiers whispered behind closed doors, generals plotted, and soldiers abandoned their posts. The emperor's authority, once absolute, had become hollow. By April 1644, Li Zicheng's forces had reached the walls of Beijing. The capital, the heart of the Ming dynasty, had never faced such an imminent threat. Citizens fled the city in terror, carrying what little they could salvage from their homes. The palace guards were insufficient in number and poorly trained. When the rebel army stormed the city, resistance was minimal. Li's men overran the outer defenses, tearing through streets and alleys with deadly efficiency. Inside the Forbidden City, the palace was in chaos. Chongzhen moved from hall to hall, watching the collapse of the empire he had tried to save. Guards and ministers begged him to flee, to escape to the mountains, or seek refuge in a distant province. But the young emperor could not bear to abandon the city or face the humiliation of exile. In a final tragic act, Chongzhen climbed Jing Mountain, overlooking the Forbidden City, and hanged himself from a tree. The last Ming emperor had died, leaving the dynasty to crumble completely. Yet the fall of the Ming did not end with rebellion. Across northern China, another threat loomed: the Manchu, a semi-nomadic people from the northeast. They had long watched China, waiting for weakness. When the Ming fell, the Manchu moved swiftly, claiming Beijing as their own and establishing the Qing Dynasty. What had begun as a peasant uprising became the prelude to foreign conquest, reshaping Chinese history for over 2 centuries. The human cost of the collapse was staggering. Tens of thousands died in battles and massacres. Families were torn apart, cities burned. Farmers and peasants who had supported Li Zicheng's rebellion often found themselves under new rulers, paying tribute to the Manchu conquerors. The fall of the Ming was not just a political event, it was a social catastrophe that touched every level of Chinese society. But the story is not merely one of death and destruction. The fall of the Ming also illustrates the fragility of even the most powerful empires. Art, literature, and philosophy all bear witness to the anxiety and grief of the era. Writers recorded the desperation of ordinary people. Artists captured images of deserted streets, abandoned temples, and ruined palaces. Scholars reflected on the failures of leadership, bureaucracy, and morality that had brought down a dynasty once thought invincible. In the years that followed, the Qing dynasty consolidated power. They repaired the Great Wall, stabilized agriculture, and imposed new administrative structures. Yet the fall of the Ming remained in memory, a cautionary tale of hubris, corruption, and human frailty. Generations would look back and ask, how could an empire so grand vanish so quickly? How could a civilization that had dominated East Asia for centuries crumble in a matter of months? The fall of the Ming Dynasty is a story of contrasts. Wealth and decay, glory and tragedy, youth and inexperience clashing with the forces of rebellion and invasion. It is a reminder that no matter how strong a nation appears, internal weakness can make it vulnerable to sudden collapse. History is littered with empires that seemed eternal, yet vanished almost overnight, leaving behind ruins, stories, and lessons for generations to come. Chongzhen's lonely death on Jing Mountain symbolizes the human cost of failed leadership. The streets of Beijing, once filled with life and commerce, were silent for weeks. And yet, through this destruction, the seeds of a new era were sown. The Qing Dynasty would rise, the city would recover, and China would endure. But the memory of the last Ming Emperor would linger forever as a warning about the dangers of corruption, complacency, and unchecked power. The fall of the Ming Dynasty shows us that history is not merely a series of dates and names. It is drama, human tragedy, and the clash of ambition and fate. An empire that once seemed eternal could vanish in months, leaving a legacy of ruin, mystery, and lessons that resonate even today. And in the shadows of Beijing's grand palaces, the echoes of 1644 still whisper, "No dynasty, no matter how mighty, is safe from the tides of history."